We're going to look at John 21, verses 15 to 19.
Jesus said to Simon Peter, He said to him the third time, Simon, son of Jonah, do you love me? Peter was grieved because he said to him the third time, do you love me? And he said to him, Lord, you know all things. You know that I love you. Jesus said to him, feed my sheep.
Of all the disciples of Jesus, I have a very soft heart for Peter. And the reason is, I see a lot of Peter in me many times. He has all the failures that I deal with and I'm familiar with in my own life. He overestimates himself and underestimates temptation. He thinks he is more committed than he is to following Christ. He thinks he loves the Lord more than he really does. He thinks he can face any trial triumphantly and finds out he can't. And by the time we get to this point in the life of Peter, he's kind of a broken man. And the 3 years that he had spent with Jesus, and he had started with maybe a bravado or a macho man, if you will, because being a fisherman, he would have worked with his hands. A very strong man, grunt work. So he would have brought that into his following of Jesus as well, meaning I can do anything. I've seen the worst in Galilee. I've fought with the worst fishermen. I've seen it all. What can I not do? So he kind of brought this sense of like, I can do anything when he started following Christ. But at the end of the 3 years, he kind of is a man who begins to think to himself, I can't do anything. I'm good for nothing. And this is kind of where we find Peter in John chapter 21, because he kind of rallies along with him 6 other disciples who kind of join him in going back to their own old livelihood. And it could be different reasons why, because like I said, 40 days went by from Jesus rose from the dead to when he ascended to heaven. And I would say 50 days to Pentecost. That's what Pentecost means, 50 days. And so that 40 days would have had mixed emotions. You would have had the high highs and the low lows. High meaning Jesus is alive. He was dead. We saw him die on the cross, crucified, and yet here he is. He's alive. And Jesus makes himself available to the disciples. And then again, it comes back to what these disciples probably thought that Jesus would do, which was to restore the kingdom of Israel to them. So again, when Jesus appeared alive again, they thought, okay, this is it. This is what we were waiting for. Jesus is now going to forcefully walk into Pilate's throne. He's going to walk into Caesar's palace. He's going to take back the kingdom. He's going to establish it. Could have been one of the expectations they probably had, because they still did not fully understand what Jesus and his message was all about until the very end when Jesus ascended into heaven. So in other words, as the days progressed from when Jesus made his first appearance, they went from this high where Jesus is alive, we're going to take the kingdom, and then nothing happens. Nothing happens. And Jesus is no longer the same way that he was, meaning prior to his death, they were with Jesus 24/7, right? They woke up with Jesus, all day with Jesus, saw the miracles that Jesus did. They went to bed every night. They were all as a group. They traveled together, lived life together. But after the death and the resurrection of Christ, Christ was no longer with them 24/7 like he used to be. He just made appearances to them to prove he was alive. But then after that appearance, Jesus was nowhere to be seen. And who knows, Mrs. Peter said, where's the money to buy bread, Peter? It's okay, you walked with the master for 3 years. All our needs were met miraculously, but now I need money to put some food on the table. I need money to look after the kids, if Peter had kids. And there was the dilemma. Am I going to live my life waiting for what is still to happen, or do I then go and take care of my needs that are so pressing? So I would say, in a humanistic point of view, the reason why Peter and many of the disciples went back to fishing was that's all they knew how to do. That was their livelihood. They didn't know anything else. So they went back to fishing in the hopes that they could then provide for their family.